Welcome to Echoes of the Past, where history isn't just old, it's oddly fascinating.
From forgotten facts to bizarre backstories, we dig into the dusty corners of time
So
so
you
you
don't
don't
have
have
to.
to.
I'm Jody Lynn, your amateur historian and full-time trivia hoarder.
And I'm Ephraim, here for the facts and the fun.
So let's rewind the clock and press play on the past. Whether you believe in things that go bump in the night or just love a good spine-tingling story, today's episode is crawling with creatures pulled from nightmares, folklore, and a few blurry trail cams.
That's right, we're diving into the world of cryptids. Some are ancient legends, others are modern internet born myths, but all of them make you think twice before a late night walk in the woods.
The first one we're going to go with is the knot deer. The knot deer is a modern cryptid emerging from the Appalachian folklore, especially in Virginia and North Carolina. It looks like a deer until it doesn't. Its movements are unnatural, its eyes forward facing, and sometimes it's reported to stalk or even mimic humans. The origins are mostly internet born through Reddit, Tumblr, and TikTok from the early 2010s. Stories exploded around 2020. The behavior is that it moves like a predator, not prey, stands on its hind legs, or has mismatched features. Too many joints, no fur, human teeth, sharp pointed teeth. People also report a sense of dread or wrongness when they see one. Some possible explanations are deer with chronic wasting disease, misidentified predators or hallucinations, and then folklore adaptation of uncanny valley horror. And it's a great folklorish tie-in, maybe the modern trickster spirit or a cautionary tale. It's not the monster you expect, it's the one you almost recognize, and I think that's what makes it terrifying. What is your opinion on the knot deer? Because I was telling you about this, and I don't think you knew about it before I started talking about it, did you?
No. I mean, with the not deer, it sounds like a lot of the other mimic cryptids
Yeah.
and creatures out there. So I mean, it's same tail, just
Spun
different
slightly.
animal.
Yeah. It almost sounds like a skinwalker somehow became in the Appalachian area. Like he took a wrong turn somewhere and now is confused.
Yeah, well, they got all kinds of whack stuff going on over there.
That is true. So, expanding on the knot deer, the earliest mentions, like I said, are anecdotes starting to appear on the Appalachian folklore forums and Reddit in the late 2010s. And then with TikTok in 2020, dozens of viral videos describing late night encounters while driving rural roads started making it more popular. Of course, the common themes in the stories are always deer that walk like humans or stalk vehicles, deer with faces that seem wrong, like too human or broken, and of course, a sense of dread or wrongness even if the creature doesn't attack. What makes it unique is it's not aggressive. The horror is existential and uncanny, a nature glitch. So, going from that, we'll transition into our second one, which is the Mothman. So, from the woods of Appalachia to the skies of West Virginia, the knot deer is creepy because it's wrong. But what about something that people believe might have been a warning or a curse? So, the Mothman is a humanoid creature with glowing red eyes and large wings, first seen in Point Pleasant, West Virginia in 1966. The sightings lasted about a year and ended shortly before the collapse of the Silver Bridge, which killed 46 people. Um, like I said, it was in 1966, November 15th to be exact. Two couples driving near a TNT plant spotted a man-sized creature with wings and glowing red eyes. Over 100 documented sightings have been, obviously documented in the Point Pleasant area. And of course, it's linked by locals as a harbinger of doom or an omen because of that Silver Bridge collapse in 1967. There are a few theories that it's a sandhill crane or a barred owl, that it's a government surveillance drone from the Cold War paranoia, or it's just a paranormal entity or interdimensional being. It has some pop culture tie-in, like the Mothman Prophecies, which was a book in 1975 and a film in 2002, and there is a Mothman statue, museum, and an annual festival in Point Pleasant.
So wait, people were seeing this thing in the sky, and then a whole bridge collapsed.
That's the legend. The Mothman wasn't the threat, he was the warning. So, I love the Mothman stuff because I think it's so silly. I don't really necessarily think it's real, but I think it's silly.
Mm.
And one of the first times I started learning about it, of course, was Fallout.
Yep.
What is your thoughts on the Mothman?
So I've been looking at like when I was little, like the top 10 stuff on YouTube
Yeah.
when that stuff was really popular.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the videos I watched had Mothman in it. So I've known about Mothman for the longest time.
Really?
Yes. And of course, there's what you said, the sightings and what people think it was. But there was another video I saw about right before before and during the Chernobyl nuclear meltdown,
Yeah.
that they saw something that looked similar to Mothman flying around.
Really?
Yes. But it honestly, I think that's just about as made up as the real
TNT bridge?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And like you said, it's in Fallout 76.
It's very heavily in Fallout 76.
And like the whole Mothman cult.
I love them so much.
You'll encounter Mothmen throughout the game, and they're not like it's not humanoid like it's represented in real life.
Yeah.
It's more like bug.
Giant mouth, legitimately.
Pretty much.
With bright red eyes.
Red eyes, purple eyes, and I think like green eyes.
Really?
Yeah.
And of course they've got the sonic boom,
mm-hmm.
which is so silly to me. But I think that's what really made me fall in love with the Mothman was Fallout's version of it. Because I think, it's so silly. And then you have all the little Mothman cultists. And apparently they don't agree with the Mothman back there. So let's expand a little bit. So, like I said, from 1966 to 67, so almost a whole year, actually a little bit over, there were over 100 witnesses. Of course, seen flying over cars, standing on rooftops, or launching from the abandoned TNT plant, and is often described as 6 to 7 feet tall with a 10 to 15 foot wingspan and glowing red eyes. Many people, of course, still believe that the Mothman's appearances were linked to the tragedy of the bridge in 1967. Reoccurring sightings are, like you said, Chernobyl, reports of a black bird with red eyes before the meltdown, the 9/11 and other disasters. The internet lore has connected it with it. And now Point Pleasant hosts an annual Mothman festival, complete with cosplay, guided tours, and pancake shaped like Mothman. We need to go. This needs to be on our bucket list.
Yeah. But I to hit on like the 9/11 and the other linked disasters, I think that's more internet lore, like an alternate, I guess, reality kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where every major disaster and tragedy is preceded by the Mothman being in the area at the time.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right. Switch up to Skinwalkers. Okay, so we got a warning from above, but now we're going underground into the darker side of shape-shifting and legend. The next one you're not even supposed to talk about. All right. Skinwalkers come from Navajo legend, where they're known as the
Yinaldushi?
Yinaldoshi, roughly translated as "with it, he goes on all fours." They are believed to be witches who can shapeshift into animals and are considered evil and taboo. So they come from Navajo culture. Few documentaries I've seen,
yeah,
of people going on the reservation and talking about it. The tribes people will not talk to you about it.
Gotcha.
They will not say the word skinwalker because it attracts it.
Yeah.
And the people who will maybe talk to you about it are the medicine men, but they don't take it lightly.
Yeah.
And it's nothing to joke about.
Oh yeah, I know when I listened to Morbid, they covered the Skinwalker. They got a lot of flack for calling it that and saying that over and over and over throughout the episode. And they learned very quickly that the Navajo do not like when you say that word. There's a specific word you're supposed to say because it's kind of like apparently Beetlejuice, where if you say it a lot, it kind of brings it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much that actually goes into the lore of it, or if that's just kind of like, fear. Kind of like with Voldemort and Harry Potter. People weren't really saying if you said his name a lot, it would bring him. It was more of a, oh, you just don't say it.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what term they used. It was something human. Instead of Skinwalker, it was something human, but it was something similar.
Yeah. So They don't take it lightly. I've driven through the Navajo reservation
Mm-hmm.
a,
Shit's
a few
scary at
times,
night.
especially during. I think I've only ever driven it through it during the night times.
Cool.
On my vacations back to my mom's house,
Yeah.
going to and from, I've always hit the reservation during the nighttime.
I don't think I've ever been able to hit it during the day, ever.
Yeah. I guess like a lot of it's where I drive through is mostly like outskirts.
Yeah.
So it's a lot worn, run down, a lot of decrepit buildings, and it just doesn't really look that great. But like driving through the deserts in those areas where there isn't a whole lot of light, you don't know what could be lurking out there in the dark.
You lock your doors real quick.
If you need gas, you're gonna have to wait till you get to the next city.
Hope you can make it
off the reservations. But yeah, their ability to shapeshift, they can turn into just about any animal. Mostly what you'll see out there in the desert, and they look like animals, but they're not quite right. They look off. So like what Jody said earlier, like the not deers, but like other animals. So you'll look at it and you'll be looking at it and you'll think, oh, something does not look right about that coyote, or that fox has been staring awful long. And that's your cue to probably get inside, lock your doors, and shut your windows.
And don't listen.
And don't listen to anything it says. What was that? There's a YouTube channel I watch on YouTube.
On the tubes.
Called Wartime Stories.
Yeah.
And he goes over like the paranormal and the cryptid stuff, like through military points of views. And one of the stories he talked about was these two, I think it was like in the 80s or 90s, I think.
Yeah.
And out in the desert, at this old army, I think it was an ammo depot, where it was a base near the Navajo reservation.
Mm-hmm.
These two guys were walking the perimeter, and they saw an old man on their side of the fence.
Yeah.
But he wasn't quite right.
Yeah.
And they were like trying to get him to like respond to them talking or whatever. And then they turned around because the radio wasn't working. And when they turned back around to talk to the old man, he was gone. But on the other side of the fence was a fox. And he said that fox could have been that old man shapeshifted it and got across the fence. Or no, I remembered it wrong. He was on one side of the fence. And then they think he shapeshifted, got through the fence, and then was on the other side, but back in his human form.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, they're said to have mind control and can mimic things. Right?
Yeah. So a lot of their way of baiting you is they'll take on the voice of a loved one, usually close family. So like your mom, brother, sister, uncle, whoever.
A tiny baby crying.
Yeah. So, if you're ever driving through Nevada, or it's not Nevada, is it Nevada? The reservation? No, it's like New Mexico.
I think it's New Mexico.
Like New Mexico, that Utah area. Just if you're driving through in the dark and you hear something when you're driving through with your windows down and you hear something, just keep driving and don't even think about it. Skinwalker Ranch, that's a big one. There's like whole documentaries. There was one I was watching on Hulu. It's not solely just skinwalkers on there. It's a lot of
I think it's just a lot of cryptids.
It's a hot spot for like the paranormal activity and all that other stuff. UFOs, creatures,
cattle mutilations.
There was one story I saw or heard on YouTube. There was the family that moved there, family that lived there. They noticed this really big wolf, like bigger than. Can you stop? A really big wolf on the property, like bigger than a normal wolf, and wolves are pretty big if you ever seen one compared to a dog. But it was abnormally huge.
And by the way, he's not saying me to stop. He's talking to Cheese, who wants to put his 2 cents into this conversation.
He's trying to stick his paw in my pocket like a weirdo. But really big wolf, bigger than normal. At first, it was, I wouldn't say friendly, but it wasn't like being hostile towards the family.
Yeah.
But the moment it spotted one of their cattle, I think it bolted straight for it. And so the father, I think his dad, they both ran in, got their firearms, and started shooting at it. And they were like blowing chunks off. But it did not faze this wolf whatsoever. And I think it killed a cow. and it did whatever, and then it like took off, and they never saw it again.
That's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. I can't think of anything else aside from the Skinwalker Ranch that it appears in.
Not TV show wise, no.
No, like on YouTube they have the creepypasta stories.
Well, yeah.
And the Reddit stories or whatever. Some of them are pretty good. Some of them are really cheesy, like the old cheesy slasher movies and all that stuff from the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
But they're interesting. If you got nothing else to listen to, I would listen to them. Unlike a lot of cryptids, this isn't fun or harmless. Skinwalkers are something you're not even supposed to speak of. That's how real they feel.
Okay, so another term for skinwalker, if you don't want to use that, is changelings, shapeshifters, metamorphs, or mimics. So those are different words you can use. You can also call them skin, like, there's a whole nother one. I'll have to look it up later. Okay, so I do want to touch on one more spot real quick. You and I camped out when I had my Tahoe in my mom's front yard out in the middle of bumfuck nowhere.
Yep.
And we had the tent up. It was kind of warm that night, but it wasn't like hot, right?
Yeah.
And so you and I were up and we were joking around in there, and all of a sudden I had to pee really bad. But you and I had been talking about skinwalkers and wendigos for like the last hour and a half before this. And
yeah, we scared ourselves.
Yeah, we did. I don't know if y'all know anything about BFE, Texas, but it's real dark, like real dark. You can't see like a foot in front of your face if you're not like having some kind of light source, and even the moon sometimes doesn't help. And so we scared ourselves so bad, I didn't want to walk the 10 feet to the front door to go use the bathroom on the inside. So I made Ephraim here watch my back as I went outside and peed on the tire so that I wouldn't get eaten by a skinwalker.
Yeah.
And we were both so scared for like the next hour after that. We could not get ourselves to sleep. Like that was not happening.
And so there in the lore of it, there is a way to kill a skinwalker. It's you have to get bullet. The way I've heard it is you get bullets that are covered in ash and blessed by, I think, one of their medicine men.
Yeah.
And you can kill a skinwalker that way.
Oh, okay. You were talking about that the other day.
Yeah. That's the only way I've heard of them doing it.
Yeah.
But I don't know how true that could be or not.
That is true.
Let's see what else we got. Yeah. We talked about the Skinwalker Ranch owned by the Sherman family. I think that's the one I heard in the story.
Yeah, because it's talking about the disappearing cattle right and there. Large wolf-like creatures.
Yep. There you go. All right, ahead of the curve. I think it'd be interesting to go visit there. I don't know if it's open to the public.
I don't think it is. Once they started the what is the Hunt of the Skinwalker?
Yeah.
Or the Skinwalker Ranch series, I think they kind of cut it off. Now, I bet if you asked and was like, "Hey, I'm doing this for research," I bet they would allow you to, but I don't think it's open. But of course, it's important always to approach with care. Many indigenous communities view discussing skinwalkers casually as super disrespectful and dangerous, like you said earlier. And so I think if you're going to try to talk to people, especially people who live in the area, about this and try to do research, that you do need to be extremely respectful, especially if it's not your culture that you're trying to talk about. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, so I Googled it. You cannot visit Skinwalker Ranch without permission.
Okay, so just ask really nicely is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
Okay, so I did want to say that the Skinwalker Ranch was owned by the Sherman family from 94 to 96, but it was then bought out by billionaire Robert Bigelow for the paranormal research, who I think is the one that owns it now.
Yeah.
And he's the one that started doing like the documentary and stuff like that on it.
Yeah. It's on Hulu.
Yeah.
At least last time I checked. I don't know if it's still on there or not. All right. Switching over to a similar creature, but way up north in Canada. Skinwalkers are all about transformation and betrayal, but our next cryptid is about survival, hunger, and losing your humanity entirely. So the Wendigo originates from the Algonquin tribes up in Canada. It's a creature symbolizing human greed. Pretty much like any story, during the winter, during like the hard winters up there in the north, when your crops go bad or you don't have a good harvest and there's not a lot of food to share or amongst everyone.
Yeah.
Some people get a little hungry and they might start killing each other and chopping up the bodies, or they're already digging up graves and feeding on those bodies.
Sounds similar to the Donner Party.
So that's pretty much what it is. It's just a cautionary tale to the children about human greed and just being an overall selfish person.
A cretin.
So with some of you, Wendigos, if you imagine them in your head, you might think of like a big lanky figure with a deer head, deer skull. It's very gaunt, kind of looks like it's a walking corpse. But that's not the traditional look of it. It's that's more modern media portrayal. A traditional Wendigo is still a like long, lanky, gaunt corpse, but instead of a deer skull, it like imagine Smeagol, but he's addicted to human flesh and will eat you.
I think Smeagol would still do that.
Yeah, maybe. A good example of what it would look like is a game called forgot what it's called.
Don't look at me. I don't know.
It's one of those storytelling games where your choices matter.
Well, while you look
Until
up,
Dawn.
Okay,
Until Dawn. I've played that game Until Dawn. I've only played it once. The Wendigo was not what I imagined it was when you first see it in the game, because at the time it's like, oh, creature with deer skull.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a cool design, don't get me wrong, but it's not what it looks like traditionally.
Yeah.
And other media I can think of in the movie Pet Sematary.
Oh yeah, they do have that in there, don't they?
Yeah, I think it makes an appearance in the book, but in the movie, it's not really there. But it's not mentioned at all. But you can kind of get a guess that it's in the background.
Yeah.
Because if you haven't seen it, spoilers.
They hint at it in weird ways.
The Pet Cemetery. There's the regular Pet Cemetery where all the kids in the town in Maine, what I don't remember what it's called, bury their pets, and beyond the deadfall, there's another one where you can. It's like a native burial ground and a big medicine wheel. If you bury things there, they'll come back. So in the movie, the main character, they bury their cat Church, and it comes back as a zombie, essentially.
Creepy ass looking cat in the movie. Oh my god.
The main guy asks, I think the character's name is Judd, if they've ever buried people there, and at first he's like, no, good, good God, no, that's horrible. But then later in the movie, when he's a little inebriated, he's like, yeah, this guy buried his son who died in the Second World War, but he wasn't the same kind of person when he came back.
Which is a very used story in a lot of horror movies.
Yeah. Like I said, it's more prevalent in the book. I think it's more of a character in the book. I've never read the book.
Yeah.
It's a Stephen King book, so it's probably pretty good.
I will say, just adding this in there because you're talking about a book. The book that I read, which is the one that I told you about where they bring all the gods from all of the different like lores and stuff together. That one talks about the Wendigo, and they use it in the book as it was on the bad side.
Yeah.
And how they describe it in there is basically how every single culture has ever thought of the Wendigo, all smashed into one. Mm-hmm. So he's real big, he's lanky, he's tall, he's got the deer skull, but he's not really cannibalistic. He's just wants to eat everything and will annihilate everything. And he brings you into his own kind of like
his realm,
his own horror, and feeds off of your horror instead of your flesh.
Yeah.
And he causes you to essentially lose your mind in fear. And that's how the book kind of puts it. It brings everything in together. So I wanted to touch on that too.
Yeah. Oh, there is another thing. There's a TV show called Monsters Mysteries in America. It's really cheesy, but it talks about a lot of the cryptids and other stuff. One of the episodes they had was on the Wendigo, and it was telling a story about this guy on a bus who killed another guy and like started eating him.
Mm-hmm.
And they came up with a term for it called Wendigo psychosis.
Mm.
And it's a medical term. I don't think it's anything recently like that's happened, but it's something they coined.
Yeah.
Just I thought that'd be interesting
That is interesting
to put out there. Oh, and then real quick, people often confuse the Wendigo and Skinwalkers. They're two separate entities.
You and I were talking about this the other day.
Skinwalkers, shapeshifters, they're medicine men who've gone bad. There's like I think they kill a family member or something like that.
The ultimate sacrifice.
And so they for more power, yeah. So then they turn into a skinwalker and they shapeshift, and so they're still humans, but they're supernatural, I guess is the term. Whereas skinwalker or not skinwalkers, Wendigos are already supernatural creatures, and they're just a personification of human greed.
Yeah.
The Wendigo isn't just scary; it's a metaphor for hunger, for greed, for what happens when you go too far and lose your soul. Early sightings from the 1800s to the 1900s, European settlers and indigenous communities across Canada and the northern U.S. during like the long winters, like I said, and reports of people becoming Wendigos during great famines during these long winters. Mm-hmm. Here we got two real life stories from one of Swift Runner from 1878, a Cree man in Alberta who killed and ate his family, said he was possessed by a Wendigo, and then he was executed by the Canadian authorities.
I don't know why, but that one just gave me chills.
Yeah, I've heard that story. Like the guy, they got stranded out in a cabin during the winter, and they couldn't go out. And so once it started, the weather getting better, he went into town saying, "Oh, you know, my family died from the cold and whatever." And then the authorities came with him, and they searched the place, and they found his family's remains, I think in a box, and they like observed or looked at the bones and saw like human teeth marks on the bones. Ooh. So they arrested him right then and there, and he blamed being possessed by a Wendigo.
That, no lie, just gave me chills from my head to my toes.
We had another story from Jack Fiddler in 1907. Ojibwe shaman who claimed to kill 14 Wendigos, arrested by Canadian police. His people believed he was protecting the community.
This man was a straight up serial killer.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that one?
No,
I haven't either.
But there, so in the lore, there is a way to kill a Wendigo. You can kill a lot of things. If it bleeds, you can kill it.
Salt works on everything.
The way to dispose of a Wendigo is you have to light its icy heart on fire. And then it kills it. Yeah, I know, very dramatic.
Wow.
That's what it says.
That's some emo stuff right there.
That's what it says. But it's icy heart. You have to light it on fire, and it'll get rid of it.
So before we move on, let's take a second to talk about something really interesting. There are similarities between skinwalkers and Wendigos, and they are usually coined as the Dark Twins. These are two of the most terrifying figures in North American folklore, and while they come from different cultures, they echo each other in some really chilling ways. So the Wendigo legends originate with the Algonquin-speaking peoples of the northern U.S. and Canada. Skinwalkers, or Yi-Naldoshi, come from, I don't think I'm saying that right, come from Navajo tradition in the American Southwest. Both are very rooted in indigenous oral history and are deeply tied to spiritual and cultural taboos. Skinwalkers are often described as witches or medicine people who transform into animals, especially wolves or coyotes, using dark magic, as he had previously said. Whereas Wendigos may retain some human features, they are twisted, emaciated figures driven by insatiable hunger, often for human flesh. Both involve human transformation into a monster, either by choice, the Skinwalkers, or through moral corruption such as cannibalism, the Wendigos. Wendigos warn against greed, isolation, and survival at any cost. Skinwalkers represent betrayal and corruption of sacred knowledge. Both of these reflect fears of losing humanity, whether from physical transformation or spiritual decay.
It's fascinating how two cultures separated by geography still created these cautionary figures, monsters that are human at their core, just twisted beyond recognition.
Exactly. It says something about how universal these fears are, that the worst monsters might be the ones we become. Let's look at a little bit of cryptid trivia real quick before we move on. The Mothman Prophecies book was written by journalist John Keel, who believed he was getting calls from a disembodied entity during the investigation.
Uh, the not deer sightings often mention them by standing completely still on the side of the road, turning to look straight at you, eyes reflecting red in the headlights.
That's terrifying.
Real quick, so the not deer, another story from Word Time Stories.
Yeah.
It was about a MP who patrolled this big base out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. It's always how that happens.
Yeah. He had a hunting spot set up in the woods, and he went up into his little
his
stand up in a tree, and he was just checking out the area, doing some stuff on his laptop, and he saw a deer come walking out of the woods, and it started smacking its skull against a tree.
Ooh.
And it like crushed its skull, brains and bits everywhere. And as he's watching it, it's obviously stomach churning and it's kind of gross.
Yeah.
At the end of it, the deer turns, stands up on its hind legs and looks at him, and it says, "I know you're there."
Oh no!
Before getting back on all fours and just walking off into the woods.
You said that, and literally, I can feel my hair sticking up. You see that?
Yeah.
No.
And so that MP said, from that point on, he went to the other side of the base and did his hunting over there. And whenever he was out there, that he brought his shotgun with him.
Dear Lord, no! That, oh my God! Feel my legs. Look at that.
Or there's another story. I should have mentioned these earlier, but there was another story similar to it, or kind of, where this guy and his grandfather lived out. It wasn't in Florida. His grandfather moved to Florida. Somewhere out in the woods. They were out hunting, and they saw a deer. It like looked at them. I don't think it said anything. I might not be remembering it correctly, but they looked at them, stand up. No, it did the same thing where it smacked its skull, but on a rock. It stood up on its two hind legs, looked in their direction, and then walked off into the river that was nearby.
Okay, so both of those sound like wasting deer disease minus the talking. So have you seen what a wasting deer disease looks like?
Yeah, I remember it was like a big thing in the news, like, oh, zombie deer.
It's still a very big thing.
Yeah.
That is terrifying. And fun fact, if you see at any time a deer with wasting disease, you are supposed to call the proper authorities, so like the game wardens of whatever state, and let them know exactly where you're seeing this, because the wasting deer disease is very spreadable and very, very quick acting and can decimate an entire habitat of deer. So just keep that in mind. The next little bit of trivia is that Skinwalker Ranch has had multiple owners, including a private defense contractor. Cue the X-Files music.
The Wendigo is considered a spiritual disease in some cultures, not just a monster, but a metaphor for a soul-consuming sickness.
And then, the last one, Point Pleasant's Mothman Festival draws 10,000 plus visitors each year, and the town has a shiny metal statue with abs. Seriously.
And a nice butt on it, too.
Yeah.
The Wendigos, a chilling reminder that some legends grow from very real fears, isolation, starvation, and what we become when survival takes over.
Pretty heavy stuff, but not all cryptids are as dark and deep-rooted. Some are just weird, wild, and wonderfully unexplained.
So let's lighten it up with a lightning round. Rapid-fire cryptids, strange sightings, and the facts you didn't know you needed.
Okay, first one up. Fresno Nightcrawler. I promise. It's not a worm. So what it is...
And it ain't a lot lizard either.
Two long white legs with a small torso, looks like a pair of pants on a midnight walk. It was first spotted by a CCTV footage in Fresno, California in 2007.
I've been there.
It's been embraced as kind of a cryptid fashion icon, very Tumblr core. It's basically just pants, haunted pants, stylish haunted pants.
Yeah. And we got the Flatwoods Monster. What it is a towering creature with a spade-shaped head, glowing eyes, and a mechanical movement. It was first spotted in 1952, Flatwoods, West Virginia, after a UFO sighting.
Of course.
Imagine that. Over in the Appalachia. Fun fact, some say it was an misidentified owls. Others say aliens in armor. Fun fact, it's also in Fallout 76.
Yes, it is.
As an enemy. And it's like, I think they portray it as a floating robot.
Yep.
And it shoots like a laser beam at you.
It's very hard to find it sometimes.
I don't know. I run across them all the time. So you mean to tell me West Virginia has both Mothman and a space witch?
I feel like we need to go spend a weekend in West Virginia.
That'd be
Just
nice.
go trapsing. Next, we're going to go over the Jersey Devil. This is a flying creature with hooves, bat wings, and a goat head. It was born as the cursed 13th child of Mother Leeds in the Pine Barrens. It's the only cryptid with its own pro hockey team. I mean, look, if I had 13 kids, I'd probably start summoning demons too. I'm just saying.
The Jersey Devil was the first cryptid that I've ever learned about that got
Really?
me into the whole looking at cryptids and such.
Fun fact, that one is also in the in Fallout.
Is it?
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
The Jersey Devil?
Yeah.
Yeah, it mentions it in, I think, one of the quests that you have to do.
Oh yeah. Okay. I played that quest not too long ago. It just in the game, it's not the same as what it's portrayed in the actual.
No, they just kind of hint at
it
that it's there more than actually showing what it is, I think.
The Hopkinsville Goblins, aka the Kentucky Goblins,
Like
small metallic skinned beings with glowing eyes and pointy ears. And 1955, a family claimed they were besieged by them all night long.
Were they on acid?
Who knows? Fun fact: this encounter inspired parts of the Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You ever get the feelings the aliens were just real bad at directions?
All the time.
Oh, I can relate to this gnome story real quick.
Oh, God.
When I lived in California, one of my great aunts on my dad's side, they had a house. And in the backyard, you know those like how people in the front yard, they have like the wood chips and the plants, and they sometimes have the stone barrier.
Yeah.
They had a gnome buying a stack of these stone things, and they were, trying to scare the kids. They're like, oh, the gnome comes out at night and is scary and woo and spooky and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, just roll your eyes at it. I mean, of course, the little kids, that's scary to them. But at that point, like for me being in middle school, going into high school, it was like, okay, whatever you say.
Next, we're going to look at the Loveland Frogman. This is a 4-foot-tall humanoid frog spotted in Ohio, often near rivers. A police officer claimed it stood up on 2 legs and looked at him. Fun fact, there's a Frogman musical. No, really. So, real quick, Morbid covered this one. And apparently they're very nice and very comical. They are little frogmen and women, apparently, that wear little, jackets, it almost looks like, and carry staffs, like they're little witches and wizards.
Mm-hmm.
They don't hurt anybody. They're not aggressive. They just come out, basically say, how you doing, essentially, and then go on their merry business. There's a lot of really funny sightings behind the Loveland Frogmen. And apparently they're very whimsical. They're just kind of there. Big old toads. So, I mean, Ohio, where even the frogs are cryptids.
Yeah, I would still stay away from Ohio. I know too many people from Ohio. I don't blame them for leaving Ohio, though. What's out there? The Cleveland Browns? Ooh. The Ozark Howler. What is it? A large black bear-cat-wolf hybrid with glowing eyes and a terrifying scream. Where it lurks, Arkansas, Missouri, and Oklahoma.
Oh, you're going to get some flack for that first one.
Yeah, the whole 4 people watching the show. Fun fact, its howl has been described as part wolf, part elk, part nightmare. If you hear something scream in the woods, maybe don't go and check.
I mean, I would scream like a nightmare too if I was a bear, cat, wolf. I mean, can you imagine those parents?
Yeah, you pop out, Mom, Dad, what am I?
It's like that TikTok sound. Well, you see, I'm a little fucked up. You put the stuffing in all the wrong places.
Pretty much. And I think, the most notorious cryptid I think everyone's heard of at least once in life, Bigfoot.
Yeah.
They've had plenty of, he's had it, she, her, whatever.
It.
has had plenty of hoaxes, sightings. The most iconic image of it is the picture of it walking in those rocks, looking back at the cameraman.
Yeah.
Very grainy footage.
I think that's just a homeless man who doesn't shave.
Yeah. Fun fact, during the filming of Return of the Jedi, when they were filming up in the Redwood Forest, the actor who played Chewbacca was told, don't go wandering off because people might mistake you for Bigfoot and will shoot at you.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
All right. Rapid fire. What's your I hope I never see this cryptid in real life?
I don't know what's around here in Texas. I mean, the one I can think of around here in Texas is the Goat Man, but that's like a 2-hour drive north.
He might travel. We don't know.
I'm not too worried about him.
But anywhere.
The Sheep Squatch, Goat Man.
I forgot about the Sheep Squatch. He's terrifying looking. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Also in Fallout 76, he's really big.
Also terrifying.
Big creature, goat head, shoots spines at or quills at you. That's the word. Florida, there's the skunk ape. There's a picture.
About that one.
There's a picture of it online. I think it's like the only picture.
Yeah.
And the guy who took it said he smelled something horrid in the area and rustling in the woods. And he got the picture of it. It looks like a orangutan with dark fur, and it has like a little streak of white on its fur.
So basically, a monkey that got out of the zoo somewhere.
Probably.
He's just living his best life now.
Yeah. Pretty much anything in the woods at night. Won't do that. That's about all I can think of off the top of my head.
I think for me, I would not want to see a Wendigo. No. I think that would tear the shit out of me.
Yeah. The only European cryptid I can think of off the top of my head is the Strigoi. It's like a feral vampire.
I've heard of that one.
But it doesn't change into like a human. It stays in its like bestial form, I guess.
Yeah.
And I was curious because when I did my rotation over there in Lithuania, I Googled it out of curiosity, and that was how'd
that do for you?
It was fine. I mean, we were surrounded by a lot of woods, but also a lot of open space between us and the woods. But the Strigoi was the only one I can remember off the top of my head from Europe.
All right. Well, that was a wild ride. Cryptids from coast to coast, creepy woods to backwater roads.
But the real world isn't the only place where the creatures like to lurk.
That's right. Some of them have gone digital. So let's talk about how cryptids have crept their way into video games and how indie horror is giving them new life. So, because cryptids aren't just creeping around the woods anymore, they've made their way into our screens, controllers, and in hand.
That's right. From big name titles to spooky indie projects, cryptids have become perfect fuel for video game horror, especially the ones we've been talking about today.
So, the Not Deer is both liminal and folk horror and is a more recent invention, as I said earlier. Indie horror games like The Deer Trail and The Not Deer Experience explore its uncanny valley aesthetic and rural paranoia. It's often used in liminal horror settings. Think small towns, eerie gas stations, and long roads you should never travel alone. Then Mothman, from Point Pleasant to PlayStation, is probably the most iconic American cryptid in gaming. He appears in, like we said multiple times, Fallout 76 as both a mysterious entity and a deity worshipped by cultists. Shivers, Cryptid Crush, and a few visual novels where he's even dateable. Mothman's legend blends horror, mystery, and cult status, making him a flexible character from fearsome to meme-worthy.
Yeah, my favorite is the t-shirt that says, Mothman ate my ass at Point Pleasant.
You still want to buy that?
I want to buy that shirt. Skinwalkers have been featured in both survival and story-based games. The Night Way Home, Skinwalker Hunt, and mods from Minecraft and Gary's Mod. Indie devs tread carefully due to the sacred and serious cultural origins of the Skinwalker and Navajo tradition. It's often used as a slow burn horror villain with emphasis on paranoia and being stalked through the wilderness.
Those are terrifying. Those are the worst to me.
Yeah. Wendigos and their media, they pop up in the game Until Dawn, where it's given a full backstory tied to cannibalism and isolation in the mountains. And the similar games, The Quarry, the sequel for it, Until Dawn, Rush of Blood, and there's mods for Skyrim, Left 4 Dead, Minecraft, just about anything you can think of that can be modded. Their designs is typically emaciated, fast, and terrifying, making them the perfect survival horror game enemies.
You and I played the quarry. Like, I watched you play it, and I've
I've
watched all of the game.
Yeah, I've played the intro to the quarry, but I haven't finished it. And Jared, my friend, needs to pay for PS Plus so I can play it again. That's how I was playing it.
That reminds me, yeah. So what's cool is how indie developers are really owning the cryptid space lately. Cryptids fit perfectly with indie horror's atmosphere first, budget limited approach. You don't need massive monsters. You need a weird noise, a shadow in the trees, a figure just off screen. Popular games like Fear and Hunger, the Backroom series, the Crypt Terror, and the Mannequin often feature cryptid-like or folkloric beings, tapping into local legends and uncanny vibes.
Yeah, real quick, like one that was pretty popular a while ago was Siren Head.
Mm,
It was all over the place. You couldn't escape it.
that was creepy too. If you
TikTok,
watched it right.
Instagram. But I think it's one of those things where once it gets really popular, it kind of loses its
Fear.
its oomph.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting creature for what it was.
Oh, 100%.
It makes sense, right? Cryptids live in the space between known and the unknown, and so do great horror games.
Plus, there's nothing like seeing that grainy camcorder footage or glitchy wood setting to remind you might not be alone out there.
So whether you're running from a Wendigo in the snow or dodging a not deer on some haunted highway, it's clear these legends have leveled up in our media.
But before Mothman was a video game Easter egg or a cryptid you could romance, these stories started somewhere. Let's rewind the clock and take a look at how cryptids came to be in the first place.
Before we wrap up, let's zoom out a bit. Where do these cryptids even come from? Like, why do we have so many stories about things lurking just beyond the edges of belief?
The term cryptid comes from the Greek word kryptos, meaning hidden. It was first popularized in the 1980s by cryptozoologists, people who study creatures that may or may not exist. That's what you need to go to school for.
I thought about it.
That would be cool. You could be like, hey, yo, you want to see my party trick? I'm a cryptozoologist.
Yeah, and then people are going to look at me like I'm crazy.
Hey, it'll be good, though. It'll be good crazy. But the stories themselves go way further back, long before there was a word for them. So ancient cultures had dragons, sea serpents, and giants, often blending myth, fear, and explanations for the unknown. Many cryptids may have started as misidentified real animals, oral traditions, or cultural warnings passed down over generations. An example is the Gigantopithecus, a real extinct ape, may have fueled Bigfoot legends. Sailors likely saw manatees or dugongs and created stories of mermaids.
With like the misidentified animals, I saw one about like the Greeks and the Cyclops, where they might have mistaken elephant skulls as a Cyclops.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, because like if you've seen an elephant skull, they got the big
hole where their nose goes.
Yeah, and then the broken tusks look like big canine teeth.
That is true.
So
I didn't even think about that. That's a really good point there.
Yeah. Like I said, I've seen it on the internet a few times.
Yeah. So in the early 20th century, interest in cryptids grew alongside scientific discovery. People still hoped there were undiscovered animals out there. That hope created a space for Loch Ness, Mokele.
It's spelled Mbemb.
I was going to say, if I try to say that, it's going to sound real unrespectful. And the chupacabra to rise. Today, cryptids thrive online, TikTok, Reddit, YouTube, becoming the blend of urban legend, folklore, and fandom. So really, cryptids live where science, mystery, and storytelling collide.
And maybe, deep down, we want there to still be secrets hiding out there. Something unknown, just waiting to be seen. We've covered creatures with hooves, wings, glowing eyes, and some that are suspiciously fashionable. But whether they're warnings, omens, or just misunderstood misfits, cryptids have one thing in common. They'll stick with you.
And honestly, maybe that's the real power of these stories. Whether you've seen something weird in the woods or just love a good scare, there's always another mystery waiting around the bend.
Thanks for watching through history with us, or thanks for wandering through history with us on Echoes of the Past.
It's late, guys. If you liked what you heard, subscribe, rate us, and tell that one friend who still quotes fun facts at parties.
And remember, history may repeat itself,
but we promise not to.
See you in the next Echo.